My name is Amber Wilson, and I'm 32 years old. I never thought I'd see my sister's face crumple in shock as her fiancé's hand connected with her cheek, the sound echoing through the rehearsal dinner. Everyone froze, including me, the uninvited sister, who was only there because the wedding planner quit last minute and begged me to help. For 5 years, my family had treated me like a ghost after choosing to believe my sister's lies. But that slap changed everything. Within 24 hours, I went from family outcast to the only person who could save my sister's wedding and possibly her life. Before I dive into this wild journey of family betrayal and unexpected redemption, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If this story of sisterhood, lies, and ultimate justice resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more true family stories like mine. Trust me, what happens next changed my entire family forever. Growing up, Madison and I were inseparable despite being 4 years apart. I still remember her following me everywhere when she was little, wanting to wear the same clothes and do everything her big sister did. Our parents, Thomas and Catherine Wilson, adored both of us. But I noticed early on that Madison received special treatment. When she cried, both parents rushed to comfort her. When she performed in school plays, they canceled important meetings to attend. For my performances, they often sent apologies and flowers afterward. Despite this obvious favoritism, I never resented Madison or my parents. I simply accepted it as our family dynamic and focused on building my own path. I excelled academically, graduating with honors before earning my MBA. While Madison struggled to find direction after high school, bouncing between community college programs, I built a promising career in event planning, eventually working with some high-profile clients in Boston. "Mom always said you were the smart one," Madison would say, a hint of bitterness in her voice. "I'm the pretty one." She'd laugh, but I could see the jealousy simmering beneath. Our childhood competitiveness evolved into something more complex as adults. At family gatherings, Madison would find subtle ways to undermine me. If I mentioned a career achievement, she'd change the subject to her new boyfriend. If I brought a homemade dish, she'd arrive with something store-bought but presented it as if she'd spent days preparing it. I learned to navigate these waters carefully, celebrating her victories genuinely while downplaying my own. Things shifted when I met Robert 3 years before the wedding drama. He was kind, intelligent, and supportive, everything I'd been looking for. When I first brought him to Sunday dinner, everyone seemed to like him, even Madison. "He's definitely an upgrade from your last boyfriend," she said, hugging me after dinner. "Good job, sis." But over the next few months, I noticed strange shifts in Madison's behavior whenever Robert was around. She'd dress more provocatively, laugh too loudly at his jokes, and find excuses to touch his arm or shoulder. Robert mentioned it once after a barbecue at my parents' house. "Is it just me, or does your sister get weird when I'm around?" he asked on the drive home. "She's just trying to get attention," I said, dismissing his concern. "She's always been like that." The last normal family gathering before everything imploded was Thanksgiving. Mom had prepared her traditional feast, and the house smelled of roast turkey and pumpkin pie. Dad carved the turkey while telling his usual bad jokes, and Madison arrived late as always, bringing a new boyfriend named Elliot Henderson. He was tall, conventionally handsome, and clearly wealthy based on his designer clothes and the luxury car they arrived in. "Elliot's in investment banking," Madison announced proudly as she introduced him. "He just bought a penthouse downtown." Throughout dinner, I noticed something odd about Elliot. He answered questions for Madison, placed his hand on her lower back whenever she stood, and gave her subtle looks when she was about to speak, as if signaling approval or disapproval. Madison seemed different too, more reserved, checking his expression before offering her opinions. But everyone was too distracted by Elliot's charm and Madison's obvious excitement to notice these red flags. Meanwhile, Robert helped Mom clear the table and engaged Dad in a genuine conversation about his woodworking hobby. He was perfectly at ease, as he always was in social situations. I caught Madison watching him several times when she thought no one was looking. By this time, my event planning business was taking off. I'd secured contracts with several luxury hotels and was featured in a local business magazine. Madison's reaction to this news at dinner was telling. "That's great, Amber," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I guess some people are just meant for work. I could never handle all that stress." 2 weeks later, Madison called with news of her engagement to Elliot. Despite having dated for only 3 months, she was ecstatic. I was genuinely happy for her, pushing aside my concerns about Elliot's controlling mannerisms. If she was happy, I was happy. "We're thinking June," she gushed over the phone. "A big church wedding, then reception at the Grand Hotel. Mom's already looking at venues." "That sounds perfect," I said. "Let me know if you need help planning. It's kind of my thing, you know." "Oh, Elliot wants to hire the best wedding planner in the city," she replied quickly. "But thanks for offering." I ignored the sting of rejection. Madison had always been competitive, and now she had something I didn't, a fiancé and a wedding to plan. If she wanted to exclude me from the planning process, I could live with that. What I couldn't have anticipated was how completely she would soon remove me from her life and how she would take our entire family with her. The night that changed everything seemed ordinary at first. Mom invited us for a family dinner to discuss Madison's engagement party. Robert and I arrived 15 minutes early to help set the table. Madison and Elliot were already there, Madison showing off her massive diamond engagement ring, while Elliot discussed investment opportunities with our father. Dinner progressed normally until dessert. When Madison excused herself to use the bathroom, she returned with red, puffy eyes, causing Mom to immediately rise from her chair. "Maddie, what's wrong?" Mom asked, rushing to her side. Madison glanced at me, then at Robert, before bursting into tears. "I can't hold it in anymore," she sobbed. "I've been trying to ignore it, but I can't." Dad put his arm around her. "What is it, Princess?" Madison took a deep breath. "Last month, when Amber was helping Mom with the garden, Robert cornered me in the kitchen. He tried to kiss me. He said Amber wouldn't have to know." The room went completely silent. I felt like I'd been plunged into ice water. Robert's face drained of color. "That's absolutely not true," he said firmly. "Madison, why would you say something like that?" All eyes turned to me, waiting for my reaction. I was stunned, but had no doubt about who was telling the truth. In 5 years together, Robert had never given me reason to doubt him. More importantly, I knew my sister. "Madison, that didn't happen," I said quietly. "Why are you lying?" Her face hardened instantly. "So you're calling me a liar? Your own sister? Why would I make something like this up?" Mom moved to Madison's side protectively. "Amber, how could you? Your sister is obviously upset." "Because it's not true." I looked to my father for support, but his expression had turned cold. "I think you and Robert should leave," Dad said, his voice unnaturally calm. "We need to comfort your sister." "You're believing her? Just like that? Without even questioning it?" I was incredulous. "Why would she lie about something so serious?" Mom asked. Robert stood up. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, I swear to you I would never do something like that. I love Amber. I've always respected Madison as Amber's sister." "Just go," Dad repeated. I was shaking as we left, Madison's sobs echoing behind us. By the time we reached the car, my phone was already buzzing with text messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins. "How could you choose a man over your own sister? Always thought you were the responsible one. So disappointed. Your poor sister is devastated." Somehow, Madison had already spread her version of events to the extended family. Within hours, I was being vilified by people who had known me my entire life. The following day, my parents called with an ultimatum: break up with Robert or be cut off from the family. When I refused, the excommunication began. I was uninvited from Sunday dinners, family birthdays, and holidays. Madison blocked my number and all social media accounts. My parents' responses to my calls became increasingly curt until they stopped answering altogether. 2 months later, I discovered security footage that could have cleared Robert's name. The day Madison claimed the incident occurred, Robert had never been alone with her. He had been outside with Dad the entire time, discussing plans for a new deck. I sent the time-stamped footage to my parents, certain they would finally see the truth. Their response was devastating. "We're choosing to believe Madison. Please respect our decision and stop trying to divide the family." Robert was my rock through it all. "They're your family, Amber, but they're choosing to believe a lie. You've done everything you can. We built our life together, separate from my toxic family. I channeled my hurt into building my event planning business, which thrived despite the personal turmoil. We bought a small house, adopted a dog, and created new traditions for holidays. For 5 years, I existed in a parallel universe where my family continued without me, and I without them. I learned about Madison's wedding plans through a cousin who still spoke to me occasionally. Madison had hired Jessica Palmer, a well-known wedding planner who had worked with several local celebrities. The wedding would be at St. Matthew's Cathedral, with a reception at the Grand Hotel exactly as Madison had always dreamed. 500 guests were invited. I wasn't one of them. Exactly 1 week before Madison's wedding, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something compelled me to pick up. "Is this Amber Wilson, the event planner?" The woman's voice was strained. "Yes, this is Amber." "Oh, thank God. I'm Jessica Palmer. Well, I was your sister's wedding planner until about 20 minutes ago when I quit. I know this is awkward, but I got your number from your website." I sat down, stunned. "You quit? A week before the wedding?" "I've never quit on a client before, but your sister has become impossible. Yesterday, she threatened to sue me because the sample centerpieces had blush peonies instead of light pink. Then this morning, she accused me of sabotaging her wedding because I suggested moving the outdoor cocktail hour inside due to the 90% chance of thunderstorms." Jessica's voice cracked. When her fiancé started yelling at me too, I just couldn't take it anymore. I was processing this information when my phone beeped with another call. "Jessica, can I call you back? I've got another call." "Of course. Just consider helping her. The wedding will be a disaster otherwise." I switched calls, not recognizing this number either. "Hello? Amber Wilson?" A male voice, controlled but tense. "Yes? This is Elliot Henderson, Madison's fiancé. I understand Jessica Palmer just called you." My stomach tightened. "How did you know that?" "Jessica suggested we call you before she left. Look, I know there's been unpleasantness between you and Madison, but we're desperate. The venue won't refund our deposit. Guests are flying in from all over the country, and now we have no wedding planner." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "But I'm not sure why you're calling me." "Because you're the best event planner in the city," he said bluntly. "And because despite everything, you're Madison's sister. We'll pay double your normal rate." I was silent, conflicted. After 5 years of being treated like I didn't exist, they wanted my help? I need to think about it and discuss it with Robert. "Robert?" Elliot sounded confused. "My fiancé, the man your future wife falsely accused." There was a long pause. "I see. Well, we're desperate. Please consider it." That evening, I discussed the situation with Robert. To my surprise, he encouraged me to help. "This might be your only chance to reconnect with your family," he said. "And professionally, planning a high-profile wedding like this could take your business to the next level. After what they did to us? After what Madison did to you?" Robert took my hands. "I've made peace with it. Maybe this is an opportunity for healing." The next morning, I called Elliot and agreed to help, with conditions. I would be treated as a professional, not family. I would have final say on all decisions, and Robert would be welcome at any event where spouses were invited. My first meeting with Elliot revealed much about his character. He was controlling, interrupting me several times and questioning my expertise. When I stood firm on moving the cocktail hour indoors due to the weather forecast, he reluctantly agreed, but made it clear he wasn't happy. "Madison won't like it," he warned. "Madison will like it even less if her guests are soaked by a thunderstorm," I replied calmly. Seeing my parents again was surreal. They greeted me awkwardly, as if I were a distant acquaintance rather than their daughter. Mom looked older, with new lines around her eyes. Dad seemed smaller somehow, less confident than I remembered. "Thank you for helping," Mom said stiffly. "Madison is struggling with the change." That was an understatement. When Madison saw me at the venue, her face contorted with anger. "What is she doing here?" she demanded of Elliot. "She's saving our wedding," he replied firmly. "Jessica quit." Madison glared at me. "Fine, but don't think this changes anything." I maintained my professional demeanor, despite the emotional turmoil. "I'm here to do a job, Madison. Nothing more, nothing less." Over the next few days, I worked around the clock, confirming details with vendors, reworking the seating chart, and solving countless last-minute problems. Despite Madison's cold shoulder, wedding guests and venue staff praised my efficiency and calm under pressure. What troubled me most, however, was watching Madison and Elliot interact. He constantly checked her phone, criticized her choices, and spoke to her with thinly veiled contempt. Madison, once vibrant and outspoken, now seemed diminished, constantly seeking his approval. When I arrived early to check flower deliveries, I found Madison alone, staring at herself in a mirror. She looked painfully thin, her collarbones protruding sharply beneath her skin. "The flowers look beautiful," I said, breaking the silence. She jumped slightly. "I told them yellow roses, not cream." "The cream roses complement your bridesmaids' dresses better," I explained. "The yellow would have clashed." She sighed. "Whatever. Elliot won't notice anyway." Something in her tone made me pause. "Madison, are you okay?" For a moment, her mask slipped, revealing profound unhappiness. Then her walls went back up. "I'm fine. Just pre-wedding jitters." I wasn't convinced, but I didn't push. My job was to plan a wedding, not repair a relationship that Madison had deliberately destroyed. Yet as the rehearsal dinner approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was helping orchestrate something that went beyond a simple wedding. Something was very wrong with Madison and Elliot's relationship, and I was becoming increasingly concerned for my sister's well-being. The rehearsal dinner was held in a private room at Bellini's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I had arranged everything from the menu to the table settings, ensuring every detail was perfect despite my personal feelings about the couple. The room glowed with candlelight, white roses and greenery adorned each table, and soft classical music played in the background. As guests arrived, I noticed the curious glances and whispered conversations. Everyone knew I was the estranged sister suddenly back in the picture. Aunt Carol hugged me tentatively. "It's good to see you, dear," she said. "We've missed you at family gatherings." I gave a non-committal smile. "It's good to see you too, Aunt Carol." Madison arrived looking stunning in a white cocktail dress, but I noticed she kept tugging at the sleeves to cover her arms. Elliot stayed close to her side, his hand firmly on her lower back, guiding her movements. He was already on his second scotch when they arrived. The rehearsal itself had gone smoothly earlier that day, though tensions were high. Madison snapped at her bridesmaids over minor issues, while my parents hovered nervously, trying to keep everyone happy. I remained professionally detached, clipboard in hand, directing people to their places and keeping the schedule on track. Now at the dinner, I stood near the kitchen doors, coordinating with the waitstaff as the first course was served. From this position, I could observe the entire room. Madison barely touched her food, pushing it around her plate while Elliot drained his third drink. My parents seemed oblivious to the dynamic, chatting happily with Elliot's parents at the main table. After the main course, the traditional toasts began. The best man, Elliot's college roommate, told embarrassing stories that made Elliot's jaw clench. Madison's maid of honor, her friend since high school, spoke tearfully about how Madison deserved all the happiness in the world. I noticed Elliot roll his eyes slightly at this. When it was time for the dessert course, the kitchen had a minor issue with the chocolate soufflés. I went back to help resolve it, returning just as coffee was being served. Madison stood up to thank everyone for coming, her voice soft and lacking its usual confidence. "We're so happy you could all be here to celebrate with us," she said, looking to Elliot for approval. "Tomorrow is going to be—" "Sit down, Madison," Elliot interrupted. "You're slurring your words. How much have you had to drink?" The room went quiet. Madison flushed with embarrassment. "I only had one glass of champagne, Elliot," she said quietly. "Well, you sound drunk," he said loudly. "I told you to watch your alcohol intake this week. Your dress is already too tight." Shocked murmurs rippled through the room. Madison's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not drunk," she insisted, a hint of her old spirit showing. "And my dress fits fine." Elliot stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Are you contradicting me in front of everyone? After all I've done for you?" My father half rose from his chair, but my mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. Madison's voice was barely audible. "I'm just saying." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Elliot's hand shot out, connecting with Madison's cheek with a crack that echoed through the stunned room. The force knocked her sideways, and she would have fallen if the best man hadn't caught her. For one heartbeat, the entire room was frozen in disbelief. Then everything happened at once. I was across the room before I even realized I was moving, placing myself between Madison and Elliot. "Don't you dare touch her again," I said, my voice deadly calm, despite the rage coursing through me. Elliot's face contorted with anger. "This is none of your business. You weren't even supposed to be here." "She's my sister," I said simply. Behind me, Madison was sobbing, her hand covering her reddening cheek. My father had finally broken free of my mother's restraint and was approaching, his face dark with fury. "Get out of my sight," Dad growled at Elliot. "Before I do something I'll regret." "You don't understand," Elliot sneered. "Your precious daughter isn't the angel you think she is. She needs discipline." Two of the groomsmen stepped forward, flanking Elliot. "Let's go, man," one said firmly. "You've had too much to drink." As they escorted him out, the room erupted in chaos. Guests were standing, some leaving in shock, others crowding around Madison. I kept my arm around her, leading her to a private corner of the room. "Has he done this before?" I asked urgently. Madison nodded, tears streaming down her face. "But never in public. He always says he's sorry afterward." My heart broke for her. Despite everything she'd done to me, seeing her so broken stripped away 5 years of hurt and anger. "The wedding's off," I said firmly. "I'll take care of everything." "No, please." Madison clutched my arm. "He'll be so angry. You don't understand what he's like when he's angry." "I saw exactly what he's like," I said. "And there's no way I'm letting you marry him tomorrow." My parents approached, both looking shell-shocked. Dad had his arm around Mom, who was weeping quietly. "Amber's right," Dad said. "The wedding is off." Madison looked from me to our parents, then broke down completely. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "For everything. You were right about him, Amber. And I've been terrible to you. To Robert, I lied about everything." And just like that, the truth I'd known for 5 years was finally acknowledged. But there was no triumph in this moment. Only sadness for what had been lost, and fear for what was to come. I looked out at the stunned guests still watching our family drama unfold. "I need everyone who isn't immediate family to leave now," I announced, slipping back into event planner mode despite the emotional chaos. "We have a situation to handle." As guests reluctantly departed, leaving whispers and concerned glances in their wake, I held my trembling sister and faced the daunting task ahead. Canceling a wedding less than 24 hours before it was scheduled to begin, protecting Madison from Elliot's inevitable backlash, and navigating the fresh wounds and old scars of our broken family. If you've ever had to make a split-second decision to protect someone who hurt you, you know exactly how conflicted I felt in that moment. The next part of this story reveals truths that changed our family forever. Stay with me, I promise the journey is worth it. After the last guest departed, leaving just our immediate family in the private dining room, I guided Madison to a small side room intended for coat storage. My parents followed, closing the door behind us. Madison collapsed into a chair, her body shaking with sobs. "I can't believe this is happening," she whispered. "The wedding is tomorrow. Everyone's here. What will I tell them?" "Forget about the guests," Dad said firmly. "We need to talk about what just happened. Has Elliot hit you before?" Madison nodded, unable to meet our eyes. "It started about 3 months after we got engaged, just grabbing my arm too hard at first, then pushing, then more." Mom sank into a chair, her hand covering her mouth. "Why didn't you tell us?" "He always said it was my fault for making him angry, that I was lucky to have him because no one else would put up with me." Madison's voice was hollow, and after a while I started to believe him. I knelt in front of my sister, taking her hands. Madison, none of this is your fault. Nothing justifies what he did. She looked at me then, her eyes swimming with tears. How can you even be nice to me after what I did to you? To Robert? The room went still. This was the moment I'd waited 5 years for, yet I felt no satisfaction. Why did you lie about Robert? I asked quietly. Madison's face crumpled with shame. I was jealous. You always had everything together, great career, perfect boyfriend, everyone admiring you. I wanted what you had. She took a shuddering breath. That day at Mom and Dad's, I tried to kiss Robert while you were in the garden. He pushed me away immediately, said he loved you and would never betray you. He threatened to tell you what I'd done. My parents gasped. Dad sank into a chair, his face ashen. So I panicked, Madison continued. I knew, if Robert told you, you'd hate me forever. I decided to strike first. I didn't think everyone would believe me so easily. I didn't think it would go so far. We believed you without question, Mom said, her voice trembling. We cut Amber out of our lives because of what you said. Dad looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. We failed you, Amber. I failed you. I should have at least heard Robert out. Before I could respond, the door burst open. Robert stood there, breathless. Amber, I came as soon as I got your text. Are you okay? Seeing him, Madison broke down again. Robert, I'm so sorry. I ruined everything because I was jealous and stupid. Robert looked stunned as he pieced together what was happening. My parents stood awkwardly, shame written across their faces. Robert, Dad said stiffly, I owe you an apology. We all do. We should have known better, Mom added. You were always so good to Amber, to all of us. Robert nodded, still processing. I appreciate that, but right now, I'm more concerned about what happens next. Amber texted that Elliot hit Madison? In front of everyone at the rehearsal dinner, I confirmed. He's been doing it for months, Madison admitted. I was too ashamed to tell anyone. Robert's expression darkened. Have you called the police? Not yet, I said. We're still figuring out next steps. Next steps are clear, Dad said, his lawyer instincts kicking in. We file for a restraining order. We cancel the wedding. And we make sure that man never comes near Madison again. Madison looked panicked. You don't understand. He'll be furious. He controls all our accounts. Our condo is in his name. Everything. You can stay with us, Mom said immediately. We'll help you rebuild. Madison turned to me, vulnerability naked on her face. After everything I did, I don't deserve your help. But I don't know what to do. 5 years of hurt and anger could have made this a moment of revenge. I could have walked away, leaving her to face the consequences of her choices. But looking at my sister, truly seeing her for the first time in years, I saw someone who had been manipulated, abused, and broken. My anger toward her dissolved, replaced by a fierce protectiveness I hadn't felt since we were children. We'll figure it out together, I said firmly. But first, you need to understand something. What you did to me and Robert was incredibly hurtful. You didn't just lie, you took away my family for 5 years. I know, Madison whispered. I've regretted it every day. At first, I was too proud to admit the truth. Then I was too ashamed. Then I met Elliot, and he isolated me from everyone who cared about me. By the time I realized what was happening, I felt trapped. Dad cleared his throat. I keep thinking about all the family events Amber missed. Christmases, birthdays, your grandfather's funeral. I didn't even know Grandpa died, I said quietly. Mom's eyes widened in horror. We thought you knew, but chose not to come. I sent an email. To my old address, I realized. I changed everything when I moved. The weight of all we had lost hung heavy in the room. 5 years of separation based on a lie that had spiraled far beyond what Madison had intended. I don't expect forgiveness, Madison said, but please know how sorry I am, for everything. Robert, who had been quiet, finally spoke. Madison, what you did was wrong, but right now, we need to focus on getting you safely away from Elliot. Forgiveness can come later. His grace in that moment moved me deeply. This was why I loved him. his capacity for compassion, even toward those who had wronged him. A commotion outside the door interrupted us. I opened it to find the restaurant manager looking anxious. "Miss Wilson, Mr. Henderson is outside demanding to see his fiancée. He's becoming aggressive with the staff. Should I call security?" "Yes," I said firmly. "And the police." Madison paled. "He's going to make a scene." "Let him," Dad said, a protective edge to his voice. "The more witnesses to his behavior, the better." As we braced ourselves for the confrontation to come, I realized that in the span of a few hours, everything had changed. The truth had finally emerged, but it had taken a public act of violence to break through years of lies and silence. Now we faced not only the immediate crisis of Elliot, but also the long, difficult process of rebuilding our shattered family. And amidst it all, we still had a wedding to cancel. Dawn broke on what should have been Madison's wedding day with a flurry of urgent activity. After the confrontation at the restaurant, which ended with Elliot being escorted out by security, threatening lawsuits against everyone we'd taken Madison to my parents' house for safety, none of us slept much. Madison was too traumatized, and the rest of us were busy making plans. I sat at the kitchen table at 6 a.m., laptop open, creating a crisis management document. My event planning experience had never been more valuable than in this moment. First priority, guest notification, I muttered, typing rapidly. Second, venue and vendor cancellations. Third, security concerns. My mother placed a cup of coffee beside me. She looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "I made up your old bedroom for you last night," she said softly. "It felt so strange, knowing you haven't slept there in 5 years." I paused my typing. "Thanks, Mom. But I'm going home to Robert after we get through the essentials today." She nodded, tears welling again. "Of course. I keep thinking about everything we've missed." "We can't get those years back," I said, more sharply than intended. Seeing her flinch, I softened my tone. "But we can move forward from here." Dad entered, dressed in the same clothes from yesterday, his phone to his ear. "Yes, we want to file immediately," he was saying. "Domestic violence, witnessed by at least 50 people." "Yes, I understand it's Saturday." Madison appeared in the doorway, looking small and fragile in borrowed pajamas. Her cheek was bruised, the mark of Elliot's hand clearly visible. She hesitated, as if unsure of her welcome. "Come sit," I said, gesturing to the chair beside me. "I need your help with some of these details." As we worked through the list, Madison seemed to grow marginally stronger, making decisions and offering suggestions. She flinched when her phone buzzed with Elliot's 20th call since last night. "You should turn that off," Dad advised, ending his own call. "The lawyer says not to have any contact with him until the restraining order is in place." "What about the honeymoon tickets? The gifts people have already sent?" Madison asked, her voice small. "One step at a time," I said. "First, we need to notify everyone that the wedding is off." "What do we tell them?" Mom asked. I chose my words carefully. The truth. That Madison has ended her relationship with Elliot due to his abusive behavior at the rehearsal dinner, witnessed by many guests. We apologize for the inconvenience, but know they'll understand that Madison's safety is the priority. As I drafted the message, my phone rang. It was Robert. "Hey," I answered, feeling a rush of gratitude for his steadiness through all this chaos. "How's it going over there?" he asked. "We're making progress. Just working on guest notifications now." "I've been thinking," he said. "Do you need me to come help? I know it might be awkward, but 4 hands are better than 2. I glanced at my family around the table. "Actually, that would be really helpful. Can you bring my emergency event kit from the office too?" When Robert arrived an hour later, the tension was palpable. He stood awkwardly in the entryway of my childhood home, a place where he'd once been welcome, then branded a villain. Dad stepped forward first, extending his hand. "Robert, thank you for coming, and for everything else." Robert shook his hand. "I'm here to help Amber help Madison. That's what matters right now." Mom hugged him, weeping again. "We were so wrong." "Water under the bridge," Robert said diplomatically, though I knew the hurt wasn't that easily erased. Madison couldn't meet his eyes at first. When she finally did, she spoke barely above a whisper. I don't deserve your help after what I did. No, Robert agreed bluntly. You don't. But Amber loves you, despite everything. That's enough for me. His honesty broke the tension. We divided tasks. Robert would handle vendor cancellations. Dad would coordinate with the lawyer and police. Mom would organize the return of gifts. And Madison and I would craft communications to guests. By noon, Elliot's threatening texts and calls had escalated to the point where we contacted the police again. 2 officers arrived to take statements and photographs of Madison's bruises, which now included finger marks on her arms that she'd hidden for months. He's violated the emergency protective order by continuing to contact you, the female officer explained. We'll add that to the report. Just as the officers were leaving, a commotion erupted outside. Elliot had arrived, clearly intoxicated, demanding to see Madison. You can't do this to me, he shouted from the driveway. His expensive suit rumpled, his face contorted with rage. Do you know how much money I've spent on this wedding? What people will say? The officers immediately intervened, but not before Elliot had revealed his true character to the entire neighborhood. As they handcuffed him for violating the protective order, he continued to rant about the money and embarrassment, never once expressing concern for Madison herself. From the window, Madison watched him being placed in the police car, her expression unreadable. I almost married him, she said quietly. I would have been trapped forever. As the day progressed, we worked methodically through our crisis list. Robert's calm efficiency with the vendors was impressive. He negotiated partial refunds where possible and explained the situation with dignity. Dad returned from the courthouse with a formal restraining order and news that Elliot had been released on bail, but was prohibited from coming near Madison or contacting her in any way. The most difficult task was calling the guests. Many had already arrived in town for the wedding. Some were angry about the inconvenience, but most expressed concern for Madison once they understood the situation. Jennifer Keller just called me back, Madison said after one such conversation. She said her sister went through something similar last year. She's organizing a group of friends to come keep me company tonight instead of going to the wedding. It was the first time I'd seen Madison smile all day. Small victories. By evening, we had handled the most urgent matters. Guests had been notified, vendors informed, security concerns addressed. Madison would stay with our parents until she could find a new place and reclaim her belongings from the condo she'd shared with Elliot. As Robert and I prepared to leave, an unexpected moment of healing occurred. My father, who had never been demonstrative, pulled us both into a tight embrace. I failed you both, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry. We all failed each other, I said, surprised by my own capacity for forgiveness after holding on to anger for so long. Robert nodded. What matters is what we do now, moving forward. Mom joined the hug, and after a moment's hesitation, Madison did too. It was awkward and emotional and imperfect, just like our family. But it was a beginning. As we drove home, Robert reached for my hand. You okay? I considered the question seriously. Not entirely, but I will be. Your family has a lot to make up for, he observed. They do, I agreed. But today reminded me of something important. What's that? I squeezed his hand. That despite everything, they're still my family. And Madison is still my sister. That night, exhausted but relieved, I realized the crisis management wasn't over. We had handled the logistical fallout of the canceled wedding, but the emotional aftermath was just beginning. Rebuilding trust would take far longer than dismantling wedding arrangements. But for the first time in 5 years, I felt hope that it might be possible. A week after the wedding that wasn't, Madison, Mom, Dad, Robert, and I sat in my parents' living room surrounded by unopened wedding gifts and boxes of decorations. What are we going to do with all this? Madison sighed, gesturing at the mountain of packages. Return what we can, I suggested. Donate the rest. The non-refundable deposits alone total over $30,000, Dad added, reviewing a spreadsheet. The venue, catering, flowers, band, a thought had been forming in my mind for days. What if we didn't waste it all? Everyone looked at me curiously. The Grand Hotel will still have the ballroom reserved for us tomorrow night. The catering is paid for. The flowers will be delivered. What if we turned it into something else? Like what? Madison asked. A charity event, I said, warming to the idea. A fundraiser for domestic violence, awareness, and support services. The room fell silent as they considered this. We could invite the same guests, I continued. Those who want to attend would come for a good cause instead of a wedding. We could auction off the wedding gifts that can't be returned, with donors' permission. The centerpieces, decorations, everything could still be used. People might not come on such short notice, Mom pointed out. Some won't, I acknowledged. But I think many will, especially when they hear why we're doing it. Madison, who had been quiet lately, looked up with a spark of interest in her eyes. We could share information about warning signs of abusive relationships, things I wish I'd known. Exactly, I encouraged. This could turn something painful into something positive. Dad nodded slowly. I like it. It honors the original purpose of bringing people together to celebrate, but redirects it toward healing. I could help coordinate, Robert offered. I've done charity auctions before. The idea energized all of us. Over the next 24 hours, we worked feverishly to transform a canceled wedding into a meaningful event. I contacted the venue and vendors, explaining our new plan. Most were supportive, even enthusiastic about the change. Madison found her voice again through this project. She worked with a local domestic violence organization to arrange for speakers and information tables. She wrote a powerful message to be shared with attendees about her experience. Do you think I should speak in person? She asked me, as we reorganized the seating chart. Only if you feel ready, I said. It's very fresh. She considered this. I want to. I need to own my story. Both the parts where I was a victim and the parts where I hurt others. Her courage impressed me. Then I'll be right beside you. The night of the charity gala arrived with surprising smoothness. The Grand Hotel ballroom had been transformed from wedding venue to elegant fundraising space. Information about domestic violence resources was tastefully displayed. Many wedding guests attended, along with new participants who had heard about the event through our hasty publicity efforts. As I surveyed the room, ensuring everything was in place, Robert approached with a small box. This might seem like terrible timing, he said, looking uncharacteristically nervous. But after everything we've been through, I don't want to wait anymore. My heart skipped as he opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant engagement ring. Amber Wilson, will you marry me? Not right away whenever you're ready, but I want to make it official. Despite the chaos of the past week, my answer was immediate. Yes. Absolutely yes. He slipped the ring on my finger, and we shared a brief, sweet kiss before returning to our duties. There would be time to celebrate properly later. Madison gave her speech an hour into the event. Standing at the podium, she looked both vulnerable and strong. A week ago, I was supposed to be celebrating my wedding day, she began. Instead, I'm here talking about how I escaped an abusive relationship just in time. The warning signs were there from the beginning, but I didn't recognize them. She spoke eloquently about the patterns of control and isolation, the gradual erosion of her self-worth, and the courage it took to leave. Then she surprised me by shifting the focus. But there's another part to my story that's harder to tell, she continued. 5 years ago, I told a terrible lie that hurt my sister and the man she loved. I was jealous of their relationship and lashed out in the worst possible way. My family believed me without question, and my sister lost her family for 5 years because of my lie. Gasps echoed through the room as Madison publicly acknowledged what she had done. I'm sharing this because abuse isn't the only way we hurt people we love. Sometimes our own insecurities and jealousies can be just as destructive. I'm incredibly fortunate that my sister was there for me when I needed her, despite everything I'd done. Not everyone gets that second chance. By the end of the night, the impromptu charity gala had raised over $50,000 for domestic violence services, far more than we had anticipated. Guests approached Madison with stories of their own experiences, thanking her for her bravery. Others came to me, expressing shock and sympathy for what our family had endured. As the event wound down, I noticed a disturbance near the entrance. Elliot had arrived, clearly intending to disrupt the proceedings. Security intercepted him before he could enter, but his presence reminded us that the danger hadn't completely passed. He's still obsessed with controlling the narrative, Madison observed, watching from a safe distance. He can't stand that I've taken it back. He can't hurt you anymore, I assured her, though we both knew recovery would be a long road. In the weeks that followed, our family continued to heal and rebuild. Madison began therapy, working through both her trauma from Elliot and her deeper issues that had led to her lie years ago. My parents became unexpected advocates, sharing their experience of having missed the signs of their daughter's abusive relationship. Robert and I set a wedding date for the following spring, a small, intimate ceremony, nothing like the extravaganza that had been planned for Madison and Elliot. Madison would be my maid of honor, a role that held deep significance for us both. The charity gala became an annual event, growing each year as more people joined our cause. Madison found purpose in sharing her story, helping others recognize the warning signs she had missed. Most importantly, our family acknowledged the painful journey that had brought us to this point. We didn't pretend the 5-year estrangement hadn't happened or that trust could be instantly restored. Instead, we committed to honesty, forgiveness, and moving forward together. One afternoon, as Madison and I worked on plans for the second annual gala, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I never thought something good could come from such a horrible mistake," she said. "Thank you for giving me that chance." "We're sisters," I replied simply. That never stopped being true, even when we were apart. In an unexpected way, a wedding that never happened had brought us all together more profoundly than any ceremony could have. The journey had been painful, but the resolution was more meaningful than any of us could have imagined. 1 year later, I stood in a small garden behind a historic inn, wearing a simple white dress that caught the late spring breeze. Unlike Madison's canceled wedding with its 500 guests and elaborate decorations, Robert and I had chosen an intimate ceremony with only 50 of our closest friends and family. Madison stood beside me as my maid of honor, looking healthy and confident again after a year of healing. The dark circles under her eyes were gone, replaced by a genuine smile as she adjusted my veil. "Nervous?" she asked. "Not at all," I replied truthfully. "This feels right." The music began, and Madison walked down the aisle ahead of me. When it was my turn, I took my father's arm. He squeezed my hand, emotion evident in his eyes. "I never thought I'd get this chance," he whispered, "to walk you down the aisle." "I'm glad we found our way back to each other," I said. Robert waited for me under an arch of wildflowers, looking handsome and steady, just as he had been through all our trials. When I reached him, the love in his eyes made everything else fade away. After we exchanged vows and were pronounced husband and wife, Madison stepped forward to deliver her maid of honor speech. She had worried about what to say, concerned that any mention of our past would darken the celebration. "Amber and Robert," she began, her voice clear and strong. "Your love story isn't just about romance. It's about loyalty, perseverance, and forgiveness. When I tried to tear you apart, you stood firmly together. You showed me what real love looks like." She raised her glass. "To Amber and Robert. May your marriage be as strong as your bond has already proven to be." Later, during the reception, Madison and I shared a quiet moment away from the festivities. "I never properly thanked you," she said. "Not just for helping me escape Elliot, but for forgiving me when I didn't deserve it." "Forgiveness isn't about deserving," I replied. "It's about choosing to move forward without letting the past poison the future." "You sound like my therapist," she laughed, but her eyes were serious. "I'm still working on forgiving myself." "That's often the hardest part," I acknowledged. Over the past year, Madison had made remarkable progress in her recovery. She'd found an apartment of her own, returned to school to finish her degree, and even started dating again very cautiously. The restraining order against Elliot remained in place, though he had eventually moved to another state after his reputation in our community was irreparably damaged. Our parents had changed too. Dad had become more reflective, less quick to judgment. Mom had learned to listen more carefully. They both participated in family therapy with us, working through the complex dynamics that had allowed such a destructive rift to form. The annual charity gala we'd created from Madison's canceled wedding had grown into a significant local event, raising awareness and funds for domestic violence prevention. Madison now served on the board of the organization we supported, using her experience to help others recognize the warning signs she had missed. My event planning business had thrived, partly due to the positive publicity from the charity gala. Robert and I had bought a larger house, with a room set aside for family gatherings that now happened regularly. After the wedding, we gathered at our new home for a casual brunch before leaving for our honeymoon. Looking around at my family, imperfect, healing, but whole again, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Harrison," Robert said, joining me on the porch while others chatted inside. "I was just thinking about how life takes unexpected turns," I replied. 5 years ago, I thought I'd lost my family forever. A year ago, we were in crisis mode after Elliot showed his true colors. And now here we are. "Here we are," he echoed, slipping his arm around me. Dad appeared in the doorway. "Toast time! Everyone inside!" We gathered around the dining table as Dad raised his glass. "To second chances," he said simply, "and to family which can break, but can also heal stronger at the broken places." As glasses clinked and conversations resumed, Madison caught my eye across the table and smiled a genuine smile that reached her eyes. We had both been broken by different circumstances, but we had found our way back to each other and to ourselves. The path to healing hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been difficult conversations, tears, and setbacks along the way. Trust had to be rebuilt slowly, day by day. But we had committed to the process, choosing reconciliation over resentment. That night, as Robert and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, Madison hugged me tightly. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she whispered. "Sisters forever," I replied, our childhood promise renewed with deeper meaning. As we drove away, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. A lie had torn us apart. Violence had brought us back together. And forgiveness had allowed us to build something new from the ruins of what was lost. Some might call it fate or karma, that Madison's wedding day never arrived, while mine had gone perfectly. But I preferred to see it as the natural consequence of choices made with love, rather than fear or jealousy. The truth, however painful, had ultimately set us all free. What's your experience with family reconciliation? Have you ever had to forgive someone who deeply hurt you? Or been forgiven when you didn't deserve it? Your stories matter and could help others going through similar situations. Please share in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible, even after the deepest betrayals. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I'm grateful for each and every one of you who took the time to listen to my story.